Hello and welcome to the Celtic Down Under Tuesday crew. I'm your host for tonight, Stephen, and I'm very happy to be joined by Gav, Mark and Willie. And welcome back, Mark, after a week off. How are you feeling?
Yeah, feeling pretty good, mate. So I work in the mines, so I do like a week on, week off. So I'm only available every second week. So trying to make the most of my days off. I've been fixing my car today. I'm doing a shitbox rally in a couple of weeks. So I've got an old car we're trying to get road-loved. Playing football last night, playing against top of the league. Unfortunately, we lost 3-2. So there's talk of us getting a positive mindset coach in for next week to try and sort us out.
That'll definitely work.
Yeah.
For sure. And Willie, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, yeah. Been up at 1 a.m. to watch the St Mirren game, which left me a bit tired yesterday, but I'm starting to get back to it now.
Yeah, that's good. Gav, how are you getting on over there in Malaysia?
Getting on very well. It was an 8 p.m. kickoff here, so that was absolutely perfect. And just another day for you and me in paradise. You know, watching Celtic these days, amazing. I can't remember in all my football history being less emotionally impacted by going 1-0 down. Just didn't even touch the sides.
Yeah. Well, we'll touch on that in a minute. I'm not sure I quite share that sentiment. I was a little bit nervous myself, given the previous results at St Mirren. So we'll jump straight into that game. So it was St Mirren 1, Celtic 5 in Paisley. What is that stadium called now, Mark? You'll know, you're a buddy, aren't you?
I can't remember. It changed its name. I don't know.
Okay.
New St Mirren Park, I think. But I think it might be. Yeah, it might have a sponsor now. I'm not sure. But yeah, New St Mirren Park. Because they moved maybe half a kilometre away from Love Street. So into a new, cleared their debt, built a smaller stadium. It seems to be working for them.
Okay, we'll call it New St Mirren Park. That sounds good. We'll St Mirren 1, Celtic 5. We obviously went a goal down with a penalty kick after Greg Taylor was penalised for handball after a VAR review. Struggled. I think it's fair to say we struggled in the first half to get back into the game. St Mirren down to 10 just before the break, with the referee giving a penalty after Kyogo was brought down as the last man. Again, overturned on VAR to a free kick outside the box. We'll dive a bit further into that later. So after the break, we bounced right back into the game, took a right hold of it, and Jota, Johnson, Abada, O'Reilly, and O with a late penalty rounded out the scoring for a very comfortable win at the end of the day. So obviously the sending off probably changed the game. But I had a bit of a look at the possession figures today, and the possession figures between the first half and the second half are very similar. So it didn't really make an awful lot of difference to the amount of time we had the ball. But I guess, as the game went on, St Mirren became a little bit more tired. So I'll maybe go to you first, Gav, just to get your overall thoughts on the game and what you thought of the performance.
Well, I think the first half I was kind of perversely enjoying the fact that we had a game on our hands. They did really well. Their game plan was very effective. I didn't think we were terrible in the first half, but they got the lucky break with the penalty, went a goal up. And for the rest of the first half, I thought we were reasonable, but they did everything they could to stifle us. And like I say, even though we were 1-0 down, I was fully confident that over the full two halves, we'd win comfortably in the end. But you're never quite sure. But then as soon as the sending off happened, there was no doubt in my mind that we were going to win at a counter. But, great substitution from our manager, taking off a winger that needs space in behind and putting on one better suited to the type of defensive action we were going to face in the second half. So unlike our rivals across Glasgow, we can have faith that our manager will make good substitutions at the time that they're needed.
Yeah, I think the substitutions definitely impacted the game, with certainly Abada being the strongest of them, who definitely had an influence had a hand in pretty much two or three of the goals. So I might jump to you next, Mark, just to get your overall thoughts on the game and what do you think?
Yeah, so like the first half, it was just kind of we never started really well. St Mirren, I wouldn't say they troubled us too much, but they had more control of the game. So like the second half, like we came into it and made much more of an impact on the game, and obviously got our chances. The sending off certainly helped us. I don't understand why he done it. Like he should have just let. I know it was a bad touch and he felt responsible, but you just let that go and hope the goalkeeper saves it and it keeps you, or he scores. It's one each. But you're going to get sent off with half the game still to play. Do you know what I mean? That's a challenge you would maybe make in the 80th minute or whatever if you're going for a league title or a cup or whatever. But yeah, so just kind of, I thought the substitutions, it's the manager makes the right substitutions, but also I think it shows you the quality we've got on the bench. Abada came on and he was superb again. And then before we talk about VAR and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, second half we came into it. There was a bit of nervousness in the first half, especially because St Mirren had the last team domestically to beat us, so there was a bit of that as well. You're kind of hoping that lightning didn't strike twice, but second half, we came into it and we were actually a joy to watch at times.
Yeah, I think in the first half, the delivery from the wide areas was pretty poor. I think both Jota and Abada had very poor first halves. In fact, you could argue that both of them had very poor games, but Abada, got hooked early. I think it was half time. But I think that was the issue in the first half. We just couldn't get any, the wingers weren't getting the byline. Nobody was really getting in behind St Mirren, and it was all just crosses from deep that their centre halves were just easily dealing with. So I think that's where the issue was in the first half in general. So what about yourself, Willie? What were your general thoughts in the game and any talking points you've seen out of it?
Oh, there was plenty of talking points in the game, that was for sure. But in the end, it was a pretty comfortable win. In the second half, we just went out and blew them away. First half, I kind of thought we were getting bullied a wee bit by them. There were a bit of roughhouse tactics from them, which the referee seemed to let go way too often. But in the second half, the sending off happened, and that was it for them. That was the making of their downfall. Should have been a penalty in my eyes. The foul sort of carries on into the box, but we'll probably just touch on that later with the VAR subject. Getting into the second half, you could see that they'd obviously had a rocket put under them in the dressing room, and they came out in the second half. Abada on the right and Jota on the left. I think Jota's more dangerous on the left as a player. Personally, I think he prefers to play out there. I think that's his natural position. But we just took the game to them, and they just couldn't live with us. They tried to, once they went sort of 2-1 down, they tried to change shape and go a little bit more direct and try and have a go to get back in the game. But within 10 minutes of that substitutions Robinson made, we were 4-1 up. Game was over. And then got his penalty at the end. Yeah, like I say, comfortable win in the end. Although I wouldn't have said that at half time. I was kind of like, is this going to be another great top hoodoo day for us or whatever? But yeah, good win.
Yeah, I'd like to give St Mirren some credit, but I'm not going to, because I thought that their tactics were pretty deplorable. They were time wasting from about the 5th minute onwards. In fact, as soon as they went a goal up, they were time wasting and they were kicking the ball away sometimes at full length of the park, and the ref was compliant, just didn't do anything about it until eventually when McGregor got in his ear about it, he eventually showed him a card. But even then they were stealing like 10-15 yards at every throw in, time wasting at every throw in, taking forever to take free kicks. And I just, to me that's the sort of thing that would get football stopped. Now I understand St Mirren are not playing in with the same resources as us, so they'll say that's what they have to do to stop us, but they ended up getting beat 5-1 anyway. So my question is, would they not have been better coming out and trying to make a game of it? They might end up getting beat 5-1, but what's the difference really? And it's so live on the TV, it's live in Sky, it's a poor advert for the Scottish game, and I've seen a lot of people over the socials giving St Mirren a bit of credit, but I just can't bring myself to. Any thoughts, guys?
with the time wasting thing, Stephen Robinson, the video clipped him at 30 minutes in the game, and you see him, he's got slow it down, slow it down, slow it down. It's like, come on, man, you're 30 minutes into the game and you're wanting to go time wasting.
You're never going to hold out that length of time, and it
especially the way we knock on the door.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I would give Stephen Robinson a bit of credit, to be honest. No manager has enjoyed as many minutes of success or being ahead of Celtic this season than he has, the Northern Irishman. And, they beat us once and they gave their all in that first half. And I think despite the scoreline, he ought to take some satisfaction in how his team put up a fight. Underhand tactics or not, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, fair enough. But I just can't give, Stephen Robinson, can't give him any credit. Disliked him at Motherwell, dislike him now. Nothing to do with him being a Northern Irishman. So let's just leave it there. So we'll jump into the referee now. Now we're talking about him. VAR again involved with the penalty against Greg Taylor. Involved again with the overturn of the Kyogo penalty, and involved again for Celtic's penalty that when O had his shirt pulled in the box light on. So what's your thoughts on the VAR influence on the game? Start with you, Mark.
Yeah, I still need to understand this handball, because it just seems like 1 week they're awarded, the next week they're not. To me, it was obviously it hit Taylor's hand, but it was a bit of a tough one, because Taylor's hand was actually in that position as the St Mirren player was touching that ball. So I don't think his hand moved after the ball left the St Mirren. So to me, he's not moved his hand. So I'm not sure if that's a 100% penalty, but it's a bit frustrating they have to wait, was it 3 or 4 minutes before they go and have a look at VAR? Like, the game's passed by, there might have been a goal in that time. What happens if St Mirren had already scored and then we're actually giving St Mirren a penalty as well? So that's something that needs to be looked at.
Yeah, I think for 90% of my football supporting life, that's not a penalty. There's nothing he can do about it. His hand's so close to the ball. It's an involuntary. There's no voluntary reaction towards the ball there. Yeah. But given what is being given as penalties now and what we've seen recently, then I can see why it was given. My issue was, why, if the referee had a better view of it than anyone and didn't give it at the time. And you're right, Mark, the amount of time it's taking to reach these decisions is just appalling. I don't know what they're doing, if they've got an old VHS video recorder up there and they're frantically rewinding it and forwarding it to replay the incident, but no way it should take that long.
So, Stephen, what I believe at the time when I was watching it, I had to wait for the ball to go out of play before the referee could go over and have a look at the incident. So that's why it took
I get that. But just, even when the ball went out of play, it still took an age to reach a decision. You should only have to look at that once and say, okay, that's a penalty. I give the penalty and let's get on with it. And I think that's the source of frustration for a lot of people. So moving on to the Kyogo incident, I'll go to you, Wally. Any issues with that getting overturned? I think you said you did. You thought that was a penalty.
The one that rankles me the most is the fact that the referee didn't go to the monitor. He just went like, it's outside the box. All right, okay, that's free kick. He didn't go to the monitor. If it's a clear and obvious error, he's got to go to the monitor and say, like, where have I gone wrong? This is where I've gone wrong, and I'll correct my error this way. But the foul carries on into the box. We sat there a couple of weeks ago when the Scottish Cup was played, and we had to listen to commentators and people in the media talk ad nauseum about how Malik Tillman's foul started outside the box, carried on inside the box, so that way it is an actual penalty. And it was like, it's the same as this. The foul happens outside the box and carries on into the box, so it's a penalty. Why is one a penalty and the other's a free kick? I don't know. I honestly can't fathom how they've overturned it.
I'm sure you could take a wild guess at that, mate.
Andrew Dallas. We'll not mess about. I'm pretty certain Andrew Dallas is probably the reason, right?
Yeah, I'm sure Andrew Dallas is up there in the box with his dash staring over his shoulder.
It just doesn't make sense. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. it's clear his hand is still on his shoulder as Kyogo is passing the white line into the penalty area. So if foul is carrying on into the box, it's a penalty.
So I've been reading a few things around the socials about it, and I've read a few conflicting opinions, and again, it comes down to the sort of minutiae of the rules, really. Now, some people are suggesting that it's where the defender making the foul, where he is when the foul finishes, and if that's the case, he was outside the box when the foul finished. But other people are saying it's where the attacker is. So it's not clear. But I guess the issue is, was it a clear and obvious error by the ref who gave the penalty? And that's what VAR is supposed to be for. It's supposed to be for correcting clear and obvious errors. And it certainly wasn't a clear and obvious error, given the fact that, no two people can arrive at the same conclusion. So Chris D there in the comments has wrote his foot was on the line, which under the rules is the same as being in the box. So, when you're looking at the replay, it's like a frame in the video of difference between being inside and outside the box. So it really depends where the VAR operator stops the frame as well. So what do you think, Gav? What's your take on it?
Well, I think the mechanics of VAR in this game were a complete mess, as usual. And, the first one, the handball, fair enough, I suppose, in this day and age. The second one, it's just so difficult to see. I mean, those two stills that we've probably all seen, the one that Sports Scene went with, where you can see the defender clearly has a grip of his shirt and Kyogo's foot is short of the line. And they're saying that that's proof that that's where it ended. And then the next still is Kyogo's foot is on the line. You can't quite see if he's totally let go of the material of his shirt. That's how small the margin is. That's the kind of detail you're looking for. It's just, it's very hard to see. It's not certain in my eyes. I can't come down on either side one way or the other. It's just, you would need to be able to enlarge those photographs, with incredibly clear detail to see whether the contact is still going on, as far as I can see.
Yeah, I think, I really, when it comes down to it, I don't really have a problem with either decision. Right, being a penalty against Greg Taylor and the penalty decision being overturned. I can see why that happened. The question in my mind is, what would have happened if Rangers were playing and not Celtic? And I think we know the answer to that because we've seen it a million times this season. We've seen more blatant handballs being let go by Rangers players. And as Willie pointed out there, we saw the Marek Tillman incident, which is almost identical when the ref gave the penalty and VAR didn't overturn it. So, that's the frustration for me. And that's where I think we've got every reason to be quite annoyed about it. I think Ange was as well. He was quite prickly about it in the press conference after it, and he made reference to the VAR decisions. Despite the fact he usually doesn't make a big deal about these things. So
listen, I saw a tweet today, and maybe you saw the same one, and I haven't been able to check whether it's completely true or not. But the tweet is this: 32% of Celtic goals conceded in the league this season have been penalties. 0% of Rangers goals conceded in the league this season have been penalties. Is that accurate? That's astounding if it's true.
Well, Rangers haven't been awarded a league penalty against them this season. You've got to go back to last year sometime for a league penalty. And it's an absurd statistic, really, when you think about it. And it does make our league look ridiculous, especially when you consider that, they're not the best team in the country. They don't score the most goals, and they're not in the box as much as us. So, but they get all these way more penalties than us, and the opposing team just doesn't get a penalty against Rangers. It's as simple as that. So whether it's I don't really like talking about conspiracies and all that stuff because you go down a rabbit hole there that you can go down for years. But what do you think, Mark? What do you think we should be doing about this? And is it something we just have to, take on the chin, as Tony Mowbray might once have said?
It's a tough one, and I don't like the conspiracy route, but there is what Gav says as well. I think it's 420 days since Rangers last conceded a penalty. And at that time, they put a letter of complaint. So it's interesting to know how long that letter of complaint's valid for them not to receive another penalty, because it's kind of. But yeah, so the decisions yesterday that went against us, we've seen go for Rangers. So, but yeah, what did we do? Did we just sit down and have a big, have all the evidence there and go through everything? It is a really tough one, but yeah, just on that one yesterday. Earlier on, with the VAR ref overturning that penalty decision, you'd expect that the referee on the park would have at least had the opportunity to go and double check. With him just accepting what the VAR ref said, I'd be expecting, if you made a big decision like a penalty and it's been overruled and it's marginal, you should at least go and have the monitor, because you've to me, he should have control of the game and it should be his decision at the end. But yeah, anyway, whether there's a conspiracy there, I'm not sure, but there is a lot of, put it this way, Rangers have been very, very lucky for the last 400 days when it comes to penalties, and we'll see how long the luck runs for.
Did you see the Sky Sports in England? Them talking about it with Dermot Gallagher.
Ask the ref. They're Ask the Ref section. There was 4 people in that section, and they were all bemused at they weren't looking at the Celtic game. They were looking at the Rangers Kilmarnock game, and they were looking at the VAR decision that 1 gave Rangers a penalty and 2 refused to give Kilmarnock a penalty. And the thing about that is that the Kilmarnock incident was really late in the game. The game was probably gone for Kilmarnock already, and if they were going to give a penalty against Rangers to sort of even up the stats a bit, that was the time to do it. Do you know what I mean? Because there was nothing. Kilmarnock weren't going to get back in the game. The points were safe, but they still didn't. And you have to ask yourself the question: are they ever going to concede a penalty?
Yeah, the people in the studio just couldn't explain it, could they? They said it was bizarre. That guy Stephen Warnock, former Liverpool and Blackburn Rovers, you could see his face was just like, what the heck's going on up there?
The last time a game was officiated properly in Scotland, our referees were on strike, and that's a fact. You look at it, like last Saturday in the cup final, you had your biannual good refereeing performance from Nick Walsh, and we're due another one sometime between now and the end of the season, which I wouldn't hold out hope on, but it's bad. It is the worst I've seen it in my lifetime, without doubt.
Do you know what I think? Do you know what I think the difference was in the cup final? In the run-up to that game, there was a couple of people called it out. There was a couple of people who were prominent in the media. One was Neil Lennon, who made some kind of, whether you like Neil Lennon or not, he came out in the media and said he would put money on a red card for a Celtic player and a penalty to Rangers. Right? So that's how Rangers do it all the time. They have got their placemen in the media who continue to drive agendas. And that's what we need as well. We need guys like Neil Lennon and Chris Sutton and our own placemen in the media. Keep flagging this. Make sure it's out there. Make sure people know that Rangers haven't conceded a league penalty all year long. And you can't get into referees' heads that way. And I'm sure that was in Nick Walsh's mind when he refereed the cup final. He knew that if he, the eyes of the world were on him, and if he gave Rangers anything, as it happened, there was nothing really debatable in the game. But I think it does help when you've got your own guys in the media pushing the line.
I think the other thing you got to look at is a hierarchy of control. I mean, who is reviewing these performances? Who's turning around and saying, "Oh, that was a good performance there this weekend. Great stuff, keep it up." Because 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a bad performance for the referee, littered with mistakes left, right, and centre. So it's poor, right?
It used to be Kenny Clark that used to do a bit of that, and he was kind of. But I don't know if it still is. But Kenny Clark's got an infamous after dinner speech where he gave John Hartson a Stonewall penalty at Ibrox because of a decision that was overturned the season before. So that shows you the integrity of him, So, but yeah, I don't know who it is now. I don't know if it still is, but that's who you've got in the background at the SFA's refereeing committee, So, yeah.
But it's like
somebody.
Sorry, it's like any walk of life. If you don't have a proper chain of command with the right information flowing down, it's not going to. I'm an electrician. If my boss doesn't give me the right drawings and the right set of schematics, I'm not going to be able to give the client what they want. And it's the same with Scottish referees. The people above them are just letting this go. If they don't give them like proper peer reviews and say, look, no, this isn't good enough, or say to them, look, this is, you're making mistakes here, there, and everywhere. You've got to nip this in the bud. They're just going to carry on. It's just like status quo, isn't it? Just go out there. Here's £1,000. Go out there, referee a game. If you make a mistake, you make a mistake. Just let it go. We just bury our head in the sand and let it go. In a couple of weeks, it'll all blow over, and somebody else will take centre stage.
I've only been to a couple of NRL games with the rugby league over here, but the refs are all mic'd up, and when it comes to VAR, they talk to each other, but it comes over the speakers, so everyone can see how they make that decision and what the decision process is. And I think that would probably be something that would help with a bit more transparency at that moment in time.
No, what I would love to see.
Sorry, go on.
What I would love to see is somebody in the Scottish media, most likely, independent, like PLZ Soccer or someone like that, having referees on to peer review refereeing performances. Somebody had the balls to do that, and they could impartially, some English fella or something could come up and just give an impartial take on what's going on with these VAR decisions, and get it out there week in, week out.
Yeah, I think if we make up the refs, we might end up hearing more than we really want to be honest with you. Can we find?
We're just crossing. We're crossing live to the VAR bunker now, and there'll be the flute music in the background. Oh,
that's right. Yeah, that's what I would be concerned about.
Yeah, another suggestion might be to get maybe some of these retired English Premiership referees come up and look at VAR. So they're the guys that are in the control room. I think that might help as well, because a lot of these VAR refs. Well, I know it was Dallas at the weekend, but some of these VAR refs I've never heard of. They've actually never officiated a top league game on the pitch, and then they're expected to be the decision maker at VAR. Do you know what I mean? So I think we need to get guys that are got the experience on the park as well as sitting there making decisions in a room.
So just go back to something you said earlier, Mark. The guy in charge of referees is a guy called Crawford Allen. Now, you'll remember him if you think back to, I think it was last year when Kyogo scored a goal at Celtic Park against Hearts, which looked on the replay to be maybe a millimetre or two offside. And Crawford Allen took it upon himself to call into a radio station from his holidays to tell everyone that the referee had got that one wrong and it should have been offside. Never been seen or heard of since. But he thought that was the correct moment to inject himself into the conversation. When Kyogo, it was the most marginal call. You could never have called it with the naked eye. There was no VAR at the time, so the linesman let it go and it was a goal. And that was Crawford. So that's Crawford Allen for you. That's the guy who's responsible now for holding the refs to account. And you're not going to get anywhere with guys like that in charge. So I think there needs to be a written branch clear out of the refereeing community in Scotland. And if you've ever, I don't know if you've ever had a chance to read a book by a guy called Paul Larkin. It's called Anyone But Celtic. And he goes into great detail about how the refereeing system in Scotland works. And it's predominantly dominated by the referees associations in Lanarkshire and Ayrshire. And if you look at the refs and where they're coming from, it's always either Lanarkshire or Ayrshire. And these are just closed shops, and they're a law unto themselves, and they've got zero accountability. And that's the issue. And it's interesting you bring up the NRL refs, Mark. I used to work down in the Olympic Park in Sydney, where the refs are based. And I used to watch them training, and they train every day like full-time sportsmen. And what they do is they do like exercise drills until they're puffed out, and then they're asked to make decisions while they're under physical stress. And that's how they do it, and that's how you produce a professional level. Don't get me wrong, they don't get it right all the time, but at least when they do get it wrong, there's accountability as well. If they make a mistake, they get dropped down a level for the next week. And we need to be heading towards that sort of system in Scotland, because the current system's a shambles. All right, so I might just read out some of the comments that are coming in about this. Shane Beaton says, we've seen here in Oz where the ref has to go to the monitor to decide whether it was a penalty or a free kick. So I was surprised the ref didn't go to the screen for the Kyogo penalty overturn, which is a good point. He just took whatever Andrew Dallas says as gospel, where he should probably have checked it himself. Stephen says they should have, but Andrew Dallas was apparently doing the VAR from our Orange Lodge. Also, it was tweeted by the St Mirren chairman. I saw that today. St Mirren chairman getting himself in a bit of trouble. He'll be cancelled by the Ibrox Holds. Peter Calero, what about the Connor Goldson two-handed save in the penalty area against Celtic Ibrox? Yeah, we remember that one. We'll never forget. Donny Boy 67 says we'll be required to shortly to start a goal down in games to give the opposition a foot in the game. Interesting. He also goes on to say dumb officials acting dumber than normal in our games. It's not even hidden. That's the worrying thing. So there's a few more comments there about the handball, but we won't. I certainly won't read out Peter Stevenson's comment, which is full of expletives. So
I might read that
we'll
when
get
we're
the show.
finished.
Yeah, we'll get the show banned if we read that one out. But thanks, Peter. For what it's worth, I do agree with you.
I do too, actually.
So so just before we move off the game, the thing about the grey away kit, load of old nonsense, eh? Tell me I'm wrong, Gav.
Nothing in it. I don't have anything to say on it, really. It's just a top.
Yeah. I mean, I genuinely don't understand why they made us wear it. With we could have worn our home kit, and it would have been easily distinguishable from St Mirren's. But there you go. But Mark, any thoughts on the grey away kit?
Yeah, well, the grey away kit. It was a bit strange how we were forced to wear that. I think there was other options there. Obviously, the last time we wore it, we got beat. But I remember a Man United game in the 90s, 1996 or whatever. They were playing Southampton away, and they were wearing a grey away strip for the first time. And at half time, they changed it to a blue and white one. And the thought was that the players couldn't make each other out. They could beat that game, and I think they maybe got a 10 grand fine. So maybe there's something in it, but I don't know. It wasn't as if. So that's maybe why the mindset was there. Something that's happened before, but it wasn't as if we were making bad passes or people were missing people or whatever. I think, but so yeah, I think it was just a little bit of superstition, but yeah, I'd be happy for us to wear that jersey again.
What about you, Willie? Will you be adding that one to your collection?
I'm not a fan of that kit, I'll be honest with you. It's not. It's pretty bland and unimaginative, if I'm honest. I'm not a fan. No. If they never wear it again, I wouldn't be too bothered. I can't understand how Adidas hasn't weighed it up and says, right, who's in the league? What colour of kits are going to clash here? You know what I mean? They're going to have. There's Hibs who are green and white and playing yellow sometime in reserve. What kit are we going to have to make sure there's no colour clash in the third kit? The third kit will come out accordingly that suits the sort of styles. I just don't understand how it's come to that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a bit of forward planning wouldn't go amiss by Adidas.
Yeah.
I mean, they bring out enough kits as it is. You think they get one that doesn't clash with anyone else in the league.
Yeah.
So yeah, Gary88 in the comments says it's a shambles of a kit. Shane likes it. It's a great kit. Never had a problem with it. And Michael says the change of kit was insisted upon if there could be a clash in strips. And it says a lot about the ref's eyesight, which we can all agree with, I think, after having talked about it at length. So one more thing about the game. Leela Bada made a big difference off the bench. A goal, 2 assists. There was a report during the week that he's refused a contract extension. I think he's still got 2 years after this season left in his contract. So should we be looking to cash in on Abada in the summer, or will we be hanging on to him for now? What do you think, Mark?
Right now, I'd keep him at the moment. He's maybe not agreed the deal, but that's negotiations between agents and stuff like that. It still might be resolved. I don't think he doesn't enjoy playing with Celtic. It probably is just a little bit of money. But yeah, I'd keep him. His goals, what he contributes, especially when he's come off the bench. Yeah, I'd keep him just now. We're not in a rush. We don't need to sell any players. We've got enough money, so we don't need to. But it's that kind of fine line between getting decent money for him, like we did for Frimpong, or keeping hold of him and hopefully he signs that new deal. But yeah, at the moment, I'd keep him. Probably keep him for most of next season. If he still doesn't want to sign a contract, I think at the end of next season we'll get decent coin for him still, and then take it from there. But I'd keep him just now. He's contributing too much for us just to cash in at the moment.
Yeah, look, I suppose it depends how much you're going to get from him at the end of the day and what his value is. You know, every player will have their value to Celtic. But I guess, you know, if we get to the summer, is this, and I'll put this one to you, Gav, is this the sort of thing that Angie's talking about when he says we need to be more agile in the transfer market? Is it guys like Abada who we need to sell at the top of their value? Because, you know, as he gets towards the end of his contract, you know, his value will decline. What do you reckon?
Certainly, I think that's what Ange means generally. I don't know if it would specifically apply it to Abada. As far as I'm aware, his contract expires on the 31st of May, 2026.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
So we could get like 2 more full seasons out of him, and he's still got a year left. You know, we could play him for another 12 to 18 months, as long as his heart's in it and his head's in the right place, and then still sell him. So, you know, no player has to commit to us forever. Like, how many of our current heroes, to your point, will be gone 18 months from now? You know, probably a fair few. So I think we can relax about Abada's contract. And I've seen other people saying that, you know, there's been nothing official on this. This is maybe just a bit of mischief making, as we've come to expect. So
well,
I'm pretty relaxed about it.
It could be his agent trying to bump up his value a bit and try to get him a few extra pounds. So, Willie, do you reckon we should stick with Abada?
I think so, yeah. I think next year's Asian Cup is going to kind of hit our squad a little bit in January, late January into February. And with Abada, he plays out wide. He's very direct in the style of play he has. He might not get to the byline. He might cut in and come in, and you know he likes a shot. And for me, he could be the guy that will transition up front once Kyogo goes off to play for Japan, and will be out there with South Korea. So we're going to need a striker. Whether we go and get somebody temporarily out in there on the market in January and just say, look, we'll give you 6 months, like a veteran striker or whatever. But Abada's there, Haksabanovic is there. So for me, I wouldn't be looking to sell him at all.
Just before we leave Abada, have you noticed his celebration? What he does to the fans with his fingers?
Is he that S? Like,
no, it's not the S. It's
no,
it's that.
Oh,
That's his name.
Real
Abada. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be a joke, Gav.
I was waiting for a punchline too.
I was waiting on a punchline there.
No, I'm just here to inform rather than entertain, Steve.
Yeah, for sure. That's for sure. Yeah, but you did promise us a joke tonight, so we're waiting with anticipation. Anticipation. Excuse me, while I fix my false teeth. All right. So we'll draw a line under that and move on to the next thing we want to talk about in the game. And this is a topic that we wanted to do last week, but ran out of time because of all Gav's jokes it was telling. We're going to do a section called How Good Was when we look back at players from the past. And the one player that we all mentioned as being one of our favourite players growing up was Paul McStay, the maestro. So we're going to talk a bit about Paul. And what our recollections are of him. So I'll just run through a bit of a bio of Paul McStay. Born in 1964 in Hamilton, raised in the sectarian cesspit of Lark Hall, probably the only good thing that's ever come out of Lark Hall. He was born into Celtic royalty, and 2 of his great uncles, Jimmy and Willie, both captained Celtic in the 1920s. Played with Celtic Boys Club, signed for Celtic in 1981. Made his debut in 1982 in a 4-0 win over Queen of the South at the Scottish Cup. Made his league debut shortly after against Aberdeen at Pittodrie and scored in a 3-1 win. Went on to play 678 games for Celtic with 72 goals and was capped 76 times for Scotland and scored 9 times. A lot is made of the trophy haul that Paul got and how he should have won more trophies, but he did win 3 league championships, 4 Scottish Cups and 1 League Cup, which is not too bad when you consider, some people came through Celtic in the 90s and never won a thing. So he left with a few medals, albeit most of them were won in the early part of his career when he was just young. A couple of notable things about Paul: his brother Willie and his older brother Willie and his younger brother Raymond both played with Celtic at the same time. He actually played with and scored with Willie McStay in an Old Firm game at Parkhead. I remember that game well. It was a 3-0 win. And I think my personal feelings are in the centenary season, 1987-88, were his best for the club. And I have great memories of Paul that season. I think he was absolutely at the peak of his game. And when he was at the peak of his game, in my view, he was one of the best midfielders in Europe. And that's the esteem I hold Paul in. So I might go to you, Mark, to talk a bit about Paul McStay and what your favourite memories are.
Yeah, so for me, Paul McStay was probably, like everyone my age, our first Celtic hero was Paul McStay. Paul McStay was just made captain. That's when I started remembering football. I went to games before then, but Paul McStay was the captain, Mr. Celtic family, but he was also called the maestro because he kind of conducted the midfield. His vision, his passing, he was good for a goal. It was, yeah. Earlier on in his career, he won a few trophies. It was unlucky later on that he'd only won, I think he was captain for 5 years before he won the Scottish Cup. But yeah, he was superb. He was, at points in the early 90s, he was far too good to be playing for Celtic. But he stuck with us because it was his club. And he could have had the opportunities to go elsewhere. Look, John Collins played beside him. John Collins went on to play for Monaco. There's no reason why Paul McStay went to a top team in England or Europe, but he stuck by us. And that's probably, it's not his greatest game, playing wise, because it was a very, very scrappy and nervous great game. But for me, I'll always remember that Scottish Cup final in 1995. Pierre Van Hooydonk scored 8 minutes in, or when it was early on in against Airdrie, that header, and it was a really, really scrappy game. I think part down to everyone being so nervous because we'd lost to Raith Rovers the year before. But at the end of the game, I remember everyone was just singing Paul McStay. It was like we'd won the league, and then straight away it was just the whole stadium, the whole Celtic end at Hampden were singing Paul McStay, and that was definitely, for me, growing up, an absolute Celtic hero. And he's actually in Australia now, and anyone that's bumped into him, I've heard it's such a humble man, such a modest man. But yeah, just for me, it was my first Celtic hero, definitely.
And that was an awful game, the 1995 Cup final. I remember it well. I mean, it was so bad. I have to admit, I lingered too long in the pub that day and missed the goal. Right, so I was walking up the stairs at Hampden, just about got to the top and the goal went in, and everyone went mad. I thought, okay, we missed the goal. We'll see the rest of the goals, and the rest of the game was just absolutely terrible. But a very emotional game. So it was Tommy Burns' only trophy as manager as well. So there was a lot of emotion tied up in that game. I remember there was a few players in tears at the end of it. Peter Grant was in a bit of a state. Had a great game. Peter Grant had probably his best game in a Celtic jersey as well, with a knee injury.
Yeah. He may have won one of the match. Enjoyed that game, mate.
Yeah. So what about yourself, Willie? Your memories of Paul, memories of the maestro?
I actually put in my notes the exact same game. It wasn't a great.
So did I.
Not a great game, but it was the aftermath of it all. Watching him,
it's what I meant.
Tommy Burns and Peter Grant hugging and crying, and just the relief that the 6-year drought was over, and the pain and the League Cup final at Ibrox against Raith Rovers. Just watching him step up to take that penalty, my heart broke that day. Like, you know what I mean? He's Paul McStay, he's your hero, and he missed the deciding penalty. Just to see the relief of just the weight of the world lifted off his shoulders to get a trophy as a captain. Aye. Just a
Yeah,
class player. What I've got on my notes here, he was the complete midfielder, not frightened to drive at the players, composed on the ball, always around the outside of the box and ready to pounce on shots. And with that raking left foot goals, he always seemed to score when he did get one. So,
It's amazing to me that everybody, or the three of us, picked that very game, because it wasn't Paul McStay's best game, far from it. But that was the moment where him having given so much to Celtic for so long and through those difficult years, he finally got his reward in terms of silverware. And the League Cup final that Willie mentions 6 months earlier, where he missed the sudden death penalty, apparently he took that really, really badly. And at the next game at Easter Road, the fans held up a sign saying, "You'll never walk alone, Paul." And then for him to then lift that trophy 6 months later, it was just such a relief for everyone, and the whole team, but him especially. It's wonderful moments.
Yeah, and that League Cup final against Wraith Rovers, I remember being at that game, and it was heartbreaking, and it summed up the period at the time. Paul McStay was such a good player, but he was surrounded by inferior players. That game should never have got to a penalty shootout. Gordon Marshall, who was a goalkeeper at the time, sold the jerseys. I think Charlie Nicholas was playing at the time, the second version of Charlie Nicholas at Celtic, who was just hopeless. Mr. Sitter, the team was full of substandard players. They just weren't up to Paul's standard, and it was really, really heartbreaking to watch him carry the can for that. And he did. You're right. At the next game at Easter Road, I was at that game as well. The fans did have that banner up, but the next time we went to Ibrox, the Rangers fans had a banner saying, "You'll never lift a trophy, Paul McStay." So that was nice again for him then to go and lift a trophy the same season. So it would have been terrible if he'd finished his time as the captain without a trophy at all. But he was such a good player who carried us through that almost entire era between himself and John Collins, who was another excellent player. But my favourite game was the New Year fixture in 1988 in the centenary year. We were talking about that off air, and we beat Rangers 2-0 just at the turn of the year. And it set us on the way to winning the league championship in that very important year for the club. And Paul McStay was just superb in that game. He absolutely ran the show. He had them all in strings. And one in particular through ball he played for Chris Morris, who then squared it for McAvenny to score, was just incredible. One of the best passes that I've ever seen at a game of football. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that, go and have a look at it on YouTube. An excellent midfield performance, and just showed him up at the time to be the best midfielder around at that time. So that's my favourite memory of Paul. Did any of you guys remember that game?
I don't remember it, but I watched it. You recommended it, so I watched it. I actually watched it tonight. It was a half-hour highlights reel on YouTube, and it was well worth a watch. Right, definitely.
Yeah. I'd have been too young. I'd have been free then. But I used to have Celtic videos that used to show you all the Celtic Rangers games and stuff like that, like all the highlights. He scored, that wasn't the game, it might have been the season before he scored the left foot ball at Ibrox. Was that the season?
Yeah, that was also in 88, yeah.
That was in the same season, but that was at Ibrox. That was in a game where he scored the opening goal, then a guy called Jan Bartram equalised for Rangers. A guy who gained notoriety later by telling everyone that Rangers were a bunch of thugs before he left the club. So that was his claim to fame. And then we scored the winner that day with an Anton Rogan header, which went in off Andy Walker's chest. So that was a good day as well. But yeah, great goal, left foot volley, absolutely brilliant. I can still remember that one hitting the net. Great feeling.
Yeah, what I love about that goal was that it's kind of Paul McStay's story in a nutshell, isn't it? A moment of elegant brilliance compared to everybody else. I mean, the ball was bouncing around like crazy in the box, and the pitch was pretty cut up, and it was an ugly physical battle in the Rangers box. And then the ball breaks to him, and he strikes it so crisply and beautifully. And, the commentators like, and there's Paul McStay. as the ball
It's a-
fired past Chris
It's a
Woods into the net.
It's a celebration as well. He runs away with his two
Yeah,
hands
right,
up.
yeah.
It's one of the iconic Celtic photos as well. There's a few of them. Like McGarvey in the Scottish Cup final when he's jumping up in the air. There's a few photos about that are just absolutely iconic to Celtic players, you know. And when he was running away with his two hands up in the air, Paul McStay that day, just the elation of managing to score, you know, it's pretty special, you know. And
Yeah, a very special player. Left the club in 1997. Had an ankle injury towards the end of his career, which he never really shook, and gave it away after that. So definitely a guy who fits the label legend, Celtic legend.
Yeah.
A term that
I have a
gets thrown about
question
a lot.
for you, Stephen.
I'll do my
If
best.
Ange was to have taken over the Celtic team with Paul McStay in it, what would he have made of him? And how would you compare him to current players in the team? How would you describe him?
Well, I love the current team. I love Angie's team. I love the way we play the game. But to be honest with you, I don't think there's anyone in the team that could hold a torch to Paul McStay at his best. If you're talking about the 1987 Paul McStay, 1987-88, then the closest to it would probably be Rio Hatate. He's probably the only one with the poise and the ability to spot a pass that Paul McStay has. But I still couldn't say he's at that level. I think Paul McStay would still stand head and shoulders above anybody in our team at the moment. A great team that though we have now. But that maybe just shows you how high I hold him, how high in regard I hold him. An absolute cracking player.
But you look at
Good
Moy,
question.
Hatate, and McGregor. Like he's a combination of all three. He's got all the best traits of all three of them in him himself. Yeah. How much do you reckon he'd be worth in the market today, Paul McStay?
It's hard to say. And you name it. I mean, at the height of his career. I mean, there was talk he was going to leave Celtic, and at the end of one season in the early 90s, he did throw his boots into the jungle on the last game, and everybody just assumed he was leaving, but he didn't. He stayed, and the sort of rumour at the time was there was nobody had came in for him, or nobody that he thought was a good offer had come in for him. So yeah, but we're all absolutely delighted that he did stay, even though he could have probably enhanced his reputation by moving to Europe. But I think it's certainly a move for as much as the likes of Kieran Tierney moves. You'd be talking about 20 million plus anyway, for sure.
Yeah, I've got that sort of 25 to 30 million mark down there written down.
Yeah.
So, it'd be big money for us,
So yeah, Paul McStay. So we'll probably make that a bit of a regular section on our podcast. We'll talk about other players. If you've got any suggestions, then you can let us know in the comments or reach out after the podcast finishes. So we'll move on from there. So our next section is something we did last week as well. Bit of an education piece for all of us when we're asking questions about Celtic that you might not know or you may know, depending on how steeped you are in the history of the club. So we hope we certainly all learned something from this last week, and I hope all the viewers and listeners did too. So the first question we're going to ask tonight, and I'm going to get Gav to answer this one, is why Celtic nickname is the Boys with an H?
Okay, well, there are a couple of elements to this. Mostly the insertion of an H after the B is to mimic what's often seen in the Irish language. BH appears in Irish. If you think about the female name Siobhan, it has a BH, Siobhan, but that makes like the V sound, Siobhan. Siobhan, your knickers, your dad's coming. So
my sister's called Siobhan, just so you know, Gav.
Oh no! There you go.
Just watch what you're saying, bud.
I'm breaking up here. I'm breaking up.
Banned from YouTube. Sorry, Jared.
I'm glad this is a virtual meeting, Mark. That's the reason. But
all good, mate.
Anyway, it goes way back. Apparently, it was first used in the 1800s in New York as an identifier of Irishness to put the H. That was the first time the Boys was ever seen like that. And then in the early 1900s, there's a famous postcard showing the words "the Bold Boys" or maybe "the Bowl Boys" in reference to Celtic. And in fact, other football clubs in Scotland with Irish roots used the term also in the past, but now it's exclusively Celtic. The other element, some say, is that it mimics the sound, but it isn't the sound from the Irish, because BH makes the V sound, like we said. So it's not the way that Irish people say the word boys, as far as I can see. I see that written sometimes, the boys or something. But personally, I think it just looks more Irish. So these days, words like boys, BHOYS, and now also girls, GHIRLS, identifies them as specifically Celtics, boys and girls. Sorry, Mark.
All good, mate.
That's a very comprehensive answer there, Gav. So, well done. So I think I didn't know that, to be honest with you. That's something that I've learned. I actually had a read at that today myself. So, that's very interesting. So the next question we're going to ask, and then Mark's going to pick this one up, is to why do Celtic have a 4-leaf clover in their crest rather than a shamrock?
So, yeah, good question, and it's something that I didn't know as well, so I had to do a bit of research today. We'll kind of talk a little bit about the Celtic jersey as well as when we started using that specific badge. It kind of intermingles a little bit. So the first Celtic crest was actually a Celtic cross, which, if you tuned in last week, is not with a soft C, it's with a hard C, Gav. So
glad you were listening, mate. Well done.
Yeah, so Celtic cross was a white jersey, green collar, red badge with a Celtic cross. So we had that for a season, and then we done away with a badge on our jersey. So we actually went to a white jersey. We went to vertical stripes, green and white. So we decided to go green and white. We used that until about 1904 when we started using hoops. We never actually used a badge until on our jerseys then, till 1955. So if you remember that famous kind of away jersey from 55 to 64, it was near enough the same as the original jersey. It was actually the away jersey, but it had the shamrock on it. So we had that between 55 and 64, and it wasn't until 1976 that we had a badge on our jersey for the first time. Does anyone know what badge it was? Just as an interesting question. Can you guess?
In 1976?
1976. We had a badge on our jersey, on our home jersey for the first time.
No, don't know that one, mate.
It's a tricky one. It's actually an Umbro badge. So we had an Umbro badge as the shirt manufacturer for the first year. Then in 1977, we've seen the badge that we've all got near enough on our jerseys just now. But it was in the centre, and it was kind of like that. That jersey reminds me of Johnny Doyle. Now, like that Johnny Doyle top, like in 1977. So this 4-leaf clover's been used as our badge ever since. So, but the earliest I could find was in 1908. The 4-leaf clover badge was created by the club and presented to the players for winning a domestic quadruple. So the quadruple back then was the League, the Scottish Cup, the Charity Cup, and the Glasgow Cup. And there's a possible theory that if we only won a treble that year, we might have continued using the shamrock. It was a couple of decades until the club actually adopted that as a proper crest. The first official usage of the clover looks to be in the front of the 1935-36 season, and it was a season ticket book. And it was actually pretty similar to what we've got on our jerseys at the moment. They haven't actually changed the badge too much. They've changed the wording of it because we were a private company. So it used to be, I don't know if you remember, Celtic Football and Athletic Company Limited. And then we went public and we changed the wording. And I see you, Stephen's got the crest. Is that the 125-year? Jersey you've got on. So now and again we'd maybe have something around the size. Obviously we got the star up there. We never introduced the star until I can't remember the year, but that obviously signifies winning the European Cup. So that's basically what I've got. for that. So we started using it officially in 1935, and then you see it start coming in with official merchandise, official documentation around about 1938 onwards. But we kind of used the shamrock as well as the clover for until 1977, when we actually adopted it as the recognised badge for Celtic.
Yeah, mate, well done. That was a very comprehensive description of the badge and everything. I do remember the 1977 strip that you're talking about, and I still think I would love someday any kit manufacturer to do a remake of that in a sort of modern context. I remember Andy Lynch scoring a penalty that won us the Scottish Cup against Rangers, and that was the iconic strip. You're right, Johnny Doyle was around at that time as well. So. Yeah, a great strip. So thanks for that, Mark. So we're moving on to our next question. And Willie's going to tell us why Celtic performed the huddle and where does it come from?
So the huddle originated in the 1995-96 pre-season tour of Germany, where we lost 2-0 away to Kickers Emden. And it was Tony Mowbray who started it. And a lot of people seem to think it's because of the troubles that his wife went through. His wife actually passed away. I think it was Bernadette was her name. But in his own words, I'll read out, I don't like to put a patent on it, but I take a great sense of pride in it. It has nothing to do with my wife, as has been wrongly reported. It came out of adversity. Celtic players needed to show real unity and togetherness. We needed to show the supporters we cared. And that was kind of through the times when Rangers were on their march to the 9 in a row. We'd just come off the back of winning the Scottish Cup, after we discussed earlier, after a 6-year drought. So yeah, it was born out of just adversity. So, and he also finishes by saying he's actually gone on to say since it's in the fabric of Celtic now. So it's part of our history. It will be there forevermore. But on that day, in the very first huddle, was Pat Bonner, Lee Martin, Tosh McKinley, Malky Mackay, Tony Mowbray, Peter Grant, Brian McLaughlin, Rudy Vata, Pierre Van Hooijdonk, Andy Walker, and John Collins. The manager was Tommy Burns. So yeah, that's where the huddle came from.
Okay, yeah, that's yeah, you're right. It's something that's stuck with us ever since, and certainly the club love to use it as a marketing ploy.
Yeah,
you know, it's.
I mean, you look at it when the fans do the huddle. It's great. You stand in the stadium, you turn your back, and the whole stadium is bouncing up and down. Yeah. It's amazing. You know what I mean?
And many a huddle has been carried out outside Scruffy Murphy's down there in Sydney after giving the Rangers a good doing. So it's still done to this day, and it's excellent. So thanks for that, Willie. So the last one that we had on the list, I'll probably have to do a bit of a potted version of this due to the time. We're running out of time. Was what was the jungle and why was it named as such? Well, the jungle was a terracing shed which ran along the north side of the Celtic Park pitch, which held about 10,000 people. It's a bit debatable as to why it was called the jungle. The most likely explanation was it was full of the sort of hardcore of the Celtic fans who, and back in the 70s and 80s, it was quite badly behaved. There was quite a lot of trouble in there. So it was maybe referred to as a jungle from then. The only argument to that I've been able to find is that it was named the jungle by returning servicemen who had fought in the Far East in the Second World War in the Asian jungles, and they christened the place the jungle when they came back. But there's no proof, there's no citations for that. So you can make up your own mind. But certainly it was an iconic part of the ground, and a lot of players said they used to love playing in front of the jungle. I was in the jungle many times myself during the 1980s. Some notable games I watched in there were we beat Sporting Lisbon 5-0. The infamous game against Rapid Vienna, where the Rapid Vienna player got hit by a bottle, or didn't get hit by a bottle, but a bottle was thrown from the crowd, and the guy pretended he got hit by the bottle. And we won the game, won the tie, but UEFA ordered the tie to be replayed down at Old Trafford, which it was, and we lost that one. So that was quite a notable game from there. I also remember watching the Nottingham Forest in the UEFA Cup in there, and it was absolutely jam-packed. I remember leaving school and going straight up there for the gates opening and just watching the atmosphere build from there. And it was certainly an occasion and a half. And I remember the centenary season, and I watched all that from in the jungle. So it sort of met its end due to the Taylor report, which followed the Hillsborough disaster, when the Celtic board, in their wisdom, decided to put seats down on the jungle, and sort of sums up the sort of pathetic nature of their stewardship. Was that rather than have Rangers fans the last ones to stand in the jungle, because they were in the Scottish Cup final of that year, and it was I've got it noted down here, 1993. Rather than have the Rangers fans being the last ones to stand in there, they had a blow away the blues party a week after the cup final, where a team of Celtic legends played a team of Man United legends. And I remember Jimmy Johnson scoring a goal in that game. So by a poor end for a very iconic part of the ground. And ultimately it got bulldozed when Fergus came along and built the new stadium. So that's my memories of the jungle. Looking back at it, fairly iconic, great times in there, great fun, really busy, definitely a safety risk, and just a miracle that no one was ever hurt or even killed. And my one prevailing memory of the jungle was the smell. And to be quite frank, it was the smell of piss. That was all you could smell. And I'll just let you draw your own conclusions as to where it was coming from. But, it was probably a pretty horrible thing at the time, but at the time it was great fun. So that's my memories of the jungle. Did any of you guys get a chance to go in the jungle?
Well, I live in Borneo, so I am still in the jungle.
I wasn't. I remember the jungle, and it looked like fun, but I was far too young. So I think the seats went in when I was about 9. So, but the seats were only in for a season, 2 seasons, 1 season.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
But yeah, it was like an absolute rabble in there. It did look like fun. I was far too young to enjoy it. I wish I could go in there when I was 19 or 20. I would have had a good laugh. But also, it's funny you mentioned it could hold 10,000. Do you remember back in the night? Like I remember back in the 90s as well. Like they used to 10 minutes ago, they used to tell you the attendance, and it'd be like 15,000, and everyone used to start laughing. So I think there was always, even though there was supposed to be 10,000 in there might have been more. But yeah, tennising was good fun back then. A little bit later, I remember going to Dens Park, going to East End Park and stuff like that, and they still had the tennising. It was good fun. But obviously, I think it was that report came in after Hillsborough, and obviously everything that went on there, so they had to kind of put legislations on football stadiums. So I think that was the aftermath of that. But yeah, it was fun at the time. But yeah, safe standing is the way to go now.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we were talking about the centenary season earlier, and I remember the game where we clinched the league was a home game against Dundee, and we won 3-0. And that day, the official attendance was given as 67,000, which was the capacity of the ground. But there was at least another 20,000 in that day. There was people standing all around the track, just spilling out from the ground. It was just so much more than that. But they only declared the attendance to the game. So yeah, it was great fun at the time. But as with everything, times change, and we've moved on now. And I don't think I would enjoy it as much if I went back there today, put it that way. So we'll move on from that. And we've run out of time. So I'll go around and grab any last thoughts from you, Gav. Any final things to send us on our way this week?
I don't have any final thoughts prepared, but one thing I was going to mention earlier, maybe you can tell me if this is true. Mikey Johnson is 1 trophy short of the same number as Paul McStay. Can that be true?
Possibly.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that.
Yeah.
So what that shows you is the element of luck as to the era that you come into as a professional footballer. We talked earlier slightly about, imagine Paul McStay being around when Ange arrived. And you can only dream of the kind of glory that he would have had under stewardship like Ange and people like we've had recently.
Yeah, so talking about trophy holes, my favourite one now is the fact that the Celtic's Japanese interpreter now has more medals than James Tavernier. So that's my favourite one for the week. So Willie, what about you? Any final thoughts?
Nah, just going to give a shout out to my mate Stevie James, who lives just around the corner from me. Well, a few K's away, like, but promise I'm going to give him a shout out, like. So, all right, Stevie, how you doing?
Excellent, mate. And Mark, yourself?
My final thoughts. Well, I won't be on for the next two pods. Obviously working next week, but the week after that, I'm actually driving an old shitbox from Rockhampton to Hobart, down the middle of Queensland. It's called the Shitbox Rally, and it's all money for Cancer Council. So we've got a car, a Ford Falcon, worth less than 1,500, and we're going to try and get it there. that'll be fun. So really looking forward to that. Got the car ready today. It's good to go. It's got Celtic Down Under stickers on it. So if there's anyone that's watching that knows anyone that's going on it, get in touch and look out for us, and we'll grab a beer.
Yeah, well done, mate. Great cause. That's excellent work, and I hope it goes well for you, and you get plenty of money for it. It's a fantastic cause. So for me, I'll just let you know that the pod will be back tomorrow night with the usual Wednesday show, which will be looking ahead to the Hearts game, which is Thursday morning our time. And also, don't forget to check out the Weekend Review podcast that was recorded yesterday with a far more in-depth review of the St Mirren game. And thanks very much for all your comments there. We didn't get round to reading them all, but we appreciate everything, and thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you all next week. And hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
Oh, well.
Hail, hail.